You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
Here it comes. Placement is down. The kick is up. Doesn't have a lot of distance, but this one is no good, and LSU will get out of Columbia with the win on a field goal wide right off the foot of Herrera. The 49-yarder does not go, and LSU will sneak out of the Palmetto State with a 3-point victory, 36-33.
As you heard it on the LSU Sports Radio Network, Chris Blair there on the call. The kick was no good, and LSU does survive 36-33. I want to start by being abundantly clear that I understand most people, if you're an LSU fan after that game, you didn't feel great about the win. I understand that. It's a symptom of being a fan. You try to live in the moment. You try to appreciate a win in the moment, but you can't help but extrapolate, pull back 10,000-foot view and say, what does this mean moving forward? So I get it. Saturday was ugly. What I will tell you, though, is that there is an undeniable reality. Every team in every sport in the history of ever, throughout the course of a season, when you finish that year, you'll look back and you'll say, we had our best game and our worst game. That's just objective fact. Every team is going to play their best game and their worst game at some point throughout a season. Your hope, as a fan, as a coach, as a player, whatever, your hope that your worst game comes against an inferior opponent and you manage to win. For example, in 2022, I would submit LSU's worst game was probably that 11 a.m. Tennessee game. Remember that? When LSU got the holy hell kicked out of it at 11 a.m., started with muffing the opening kickoff of the game, and it never got better. You played your worst game against a really good team, and it did not go well. Similarly, that 2022 team probably played its best game, its most complete game of the year against Alabama, and they managed to win that game at home. That's kind of what you hope. You play your best game against your best competition. You play your worst game against a lesser team that you can beat anyway. My hope for this LSU team is that what we saw on Saturday, when LSU finishes up Thanksgiving weekend against Oklahoma, and it's all said and done, and we know whatever the postseason destination will be, my hope is we look back and say, man, remember that Saturday in September against South Carolina? Boy, worse this team looked all year. That's my hope. I don't know if that's the reality. That's my hope. Because, y'all, the list of bad was really long. When I sit there and I watch a game, I always have my notepad, and as I'm charting the game, I have two columns at the top of the page. One's good and one's bad. Basically, it's notes to myself to say, here were the good plays that you want to talk about, here are the bad plays. I charted 6 good plays in the first half. Zy Alexander's interception, your red zone defense, which forced a field goal on the third possession. Caden Durham's touchdown run was awesome. You forced a fumble, the Kyron Lacey touchdown, and you had a big sack as well in the first half. Here is my list of bad. Literally the first play of the game, Harold Perkins missed a tackle. Talked all week about how bad of a quarterback Lenora Sellers is. You realize, y'all, by the way, do you realize? And I understand it was Robbie Ashford in the second half. South Carolina attempted 4 passes in the second half. They were 2 for 4. First play of the game. They have no confidence in Lenora Sellers' ability to throw the ball downfield. What do? Hike, he just dumps it to the tight end on the right side of the line of scrimmage. Just boop. Harold Perkins, here he comes, like a flash, misses the tackle. Right there, make that tackle. It's 2nd and 10. They're running the football, probably into a brick wall because it's predictable. It's 3rd and long. Sellers has to throw it downfield. That's not going to go well. Instead, 17 yards because you can't tackle. You allowed a 7-play touchdown drive. After you went 3 and out, you muffed a punt. You shanked a punt, 39 yards. You had pass interference on Ashton Stamps. You had a pick 6, which was negated by a penalty. You had a holding call. You gave up a sack on 3rd and 10. You had 2 disconcerting signal penalties. Again, Gio Paez had a face mask called against him. You had 2 penalties on the same play, illegal formation and intentional grounding. You had a punt blocked, holding on DJ Chester. You allowed a 75-yard touchdown run. You had a bad snap on a PAT. That's all in the first half. And despite all of that bad, you went to half in a 1-score game. Boy, this reeked of the Missouri game a year ago. You remember that game in Columbia? Another 11 a.m. game. You were atrocious. Found yourself down early. You got a game-changing play when Harold Perkins came up with an interception. You scored before half, and you managed to fight your way back into the game, and you wound up winning a road game in the SEC. Very similar. There was some good. You can't win a game without there being some good. You rallied from down 17 on the road. That objectively, big picture, is a very good thing. You were down 17. You could have packed it in. You didn't. You rallied and you won the game. How about Garrett Nussmeier? Garrett Nussmeier, after LSU had 7 yards of offense, 7 yards of offense in the first quarter. Nussmeier rallied to have not only a fantastic day, but after he threw an absolutely atrocious interception in the fourth quarter, after you came away with a huge play, a fumble that allowed you to take over 1st and 10 at the South Carolina 12-yard line when you were down 4. On 3rd and 11, Garrett Nussmeier throws an inexplicable interception. The mistake that we all have feared that Nuss has deep within him somewhere. Now, the pick 6 came back because that probably would have iced the game. But the idiot defensive end decided, I'm going to go take a cheap shot on the quarterback. Idiot, you cost your team the game. Anyway, after that hideous interception, Garrett Nussmeier comes right back and leads you on the game-winning touchdown drive. And that drive was something to behold, man. You got the ball with 3:46 on your own 41. Caden Durham for 10 yards. On 3rd and 6, Durham got you 3 yards. You had to go for it on 4th and 3. Those idiots jumped off sides. Gave you a first down. I mean, like, all the South Carolina people complaining about the refs. Your team is terrible. Your team is terrible and undisciplined. That's why you lost that game. You're poorly coached and undisciplined. Kyron Lacey with a beautiful catch on 1st down. They were offsides again on a 2nd down. Gives you 2nd and 2. I mean, right down the field. Ultimately, Josh Williams would score on the 3rd and 2 play after the interception. I mean, that was fantastic to see. And your defense got the stop. Caden Durham. Shouldn't have taken me 8 minutes into this to talk about Caden Durham. I was doing some PFF digging. I was waiting for this number, and I tweeted it for those that might have missed it. Caden Durham is exactly what you were missing. Remember what Brian Kelly said last week before the South Carolina game? Here, remember, this is what Brian Kelly said about the running backs before the South Carolina game.
Let me be clear. There are times you have to run the ball with extra hats, right? The guy that's the running back gets a scholarship, and he's got to make a guy miss here, sooner or later, too. So I don't want to paint the picture that we're never going to run the box with 7 guys.
Caden Durham was the guy who finally made somebody miss, finally broke a tackle. I shared this on Twitter from Pro Football Focus. Caden Durham, 11 rushes, 98 yards, 50. More than half of Caden Durham's yardage came after contact. An average of 4.55 yards after contact. He was incredible. And you might have finally found the guy you were looking for. Hat tip to Aaron Anderson, 5 catches, 96 yards. It wasn't just 5 for 96. They were big. First drive on that 3rd and 6. Remember, he caught the ball, reached for the sticks, got you 6 yards. A 23-yarder before half when you scored before half. 44 yards. That was after a false start in the 3rd quarter that put you behind the sticks. He came up with a 44-yarder over the middle. 3rd and 7 later in the second half, he got you 16 yards. They were big catches for Aaron Anderson. How about Braden Swinson, SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week, 3 sacks. Your defense created havoc throughout the day. 5 sacks, 9 TFLs, 4 forced fumbles. You weren't good defensively, per se, but you did create havoc. Y'all, I get it. It was a poorly played game. It was a poorly played game by both teams. Those were 2 undisciplined teams that combined for more than 20 penalties, 200 yards in penalties, turnovers. LSU threw 2 pick sixes that came off the board. You botched a PAT attempt. They missed a field goal that would have tied it. I mean, it was a terribly played ball game. Those were 2 very poor. Those two teams executed very poorly on Saturday. Your run fits allowed a 75-yard and a 66-yard touchdown. I mean, there's nothing. You can't wipe away all that bad. But like your mom always used to say, you're going to learn a lesson the hard way. LSU managed to learn this lesson about being ready to play on the road in the SEC, and they won and mathematically kept everything alive. I get it, y'all. This team may not be able to overcome its personnel deficiencies. But because you won that game, your possibilities still exist. Remember, last year, you lost 2 games in September. That Ole Miss loss, the 55-49, was in September. You turned the calendar to October already with 2 losses. Now, you've at least mathematically kept yourself alive. Because UCLA's coming in. They just got blown out at home by Indiana, by the way. Then you're going to play South Alabama. You're going to win the next 2 weeks. You're hopefully going to keep improving. You're going to have an open date to get healthy. And then hopefully Tiger Stadium is at full throat, bat bleep crazy when Ole Miss comes in here and you take your swing. How hard is it to go win on the road in the SEC? Ask South Carolina just this weekend. Ask Georgia going to Kentucky. You'll have a chance to take your swing. I'm not saying it's going to go great, but one thing that's also true about Brian Kelly's teams that we've seen the last 2 years, they improve as the season goes along. That same team that looked so bad against Florida State in the opener against the Dome is the same team that beat Alabama in Tiger Stadium in November. Teams can improve. I think this one will as well. What is their ceiling? I don't know. Probably lower than I thought at the beginning of the season. I still don't think they're good enough to overcome a lot of their personnel deficiencies. But they're going to put it together at some point this season and play their best game. And when they do, I hope it's in one of the biggest games. It allows this team to keep playing for meaningful things as they go along. So you won the game. You got a lot to fix. But at least you're going to learn the lessons of Saturday coming off a win as opposed to what happened in the season opener against USC. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.